this idea, I slept on it, but I don't know what to call it. And something told me that this was going to be a very successful venture, but I don't know what to call it. Let's figure that out. You're listening to The Creative Catalyst. How to establish an identity as it relates to branding. A lot of people relate branding to a logo, as it's the most popular thing that is universally recognizable. But the truth of the matter is, not a lot of people understand what an identity really is. It goes past just the logo. Identity goes into the sound, the way the word or the name is said, the thing that people think about when they hear that word, the things that they think about when they see that logo, when they see that icon. All of these are the individual elements that make up of what a brand, what an identity is. In this podcast, we're going to talk about what that is and relates to identity and branding. We're going to break it up into 3 points. I want to talk about the name, the feeling, the impact. So, the name. Speaking from personal points in my life as I was establishing my brand, I can say that I wanted to stand for something, but I wasn't really certain exactly what it was that I wanted to call myself. So then that way I wouldn't mind someone else calling me that. So I had to sleep on it. I had to really fill it out. It had to feel right. It had to mesh well. I couldn't just call myself just any old thing. Pretty much I think the signs really stuck out when I really focused on it really, really hard as far as, well, what do I want to stand for? What are my interests? What do I like? What are the things that really make me feel like doing what it is that I want to do? So I took notes. I made a vision board. I basically put things out there. So every single day, little bit by little bit, I applied that principle to myself. And now I basically developed a type of discipline to kind of kickstart and jumpstart my inspiration muscles in my brain. By me going through this exercise, this conscious exercise, it basically told me what the name that I needed to come up with. So I came up with the name. So then the next process, I had to look at, okay, well, how do I spell this name? Do I want to spell it the exact spelling like everybody else? Or do I want to play with that lettering? But if I play with that lettering, are people going to read it and pronounce it the way that I want them to read it and pronounce it? So then now we're going into a language barrier, because I don't want it to be something that's so unique that it gets lost in translation. So I don't want it to be a case where I get consumed in my idea because I only want people to respect that I'm an artist, I'm creative, and I'm not really including the fact that if this is going to be for people, I need to make this easier for them to be able to digest. And that's what's important. The name was something that is always going to take time to come up with. It can be the quickest time, it could hit you, but it might even take a week, might even take a month. But one of the most potent gems that I can put out there is that you never, ever go with the very first name that comes up in your mind. You never do that. And it's almost kind of like if you're going to a grocery store and you're picking out fruits. The likelihood that you're going to pick up that first piece of fruit and put it in your bag is slim, because you want to test it. You want to see if it has any markings, any blemishes on there? Is it bruised? Has anyone else touched it before and it's showing signs of wear and tear? You want to be able to flesh that out beforehand. You don't want to be so quick and so much in a hurry to rush a name, because you got to look at it like this. Your brand is a child. That brand has to grow up into its name, and it has to exemplify its name. It has to represent itself as such, and that's a representation of you. Look at your brand as if it was your child. Okay? Point number 2, the feeling. The feeling goes into what someone feels in their stomach, in their heart, what they think about, what they smell, the vibe that they get. That's what the feeling is. When you have that name and you figured out what you want to call it, you haven't quite gotten a visual together, but you know you got the name solid. If you're selling cookies and you decide to call your business whatever it is, and either put the name cookies at the end of it, or confections at the end of it, or some kind of, synonymous name to what a cookie is, somebody needs to be able to automatically know what that is. It needs to stick to them like glue, automatically. It should be something that they should not have to work too hard just to guess what that thing is. Everybody is not going to get your idea the first go. You have to get over that. You have to get that out your mind. If you keep taking everything so personal, you'll never get anywhere in life. Your brand is never going to go anywhere. You'll never be anything. You have to be able to take that constructive criticism as you go in your process of growth. That feeling has to be so engraved into it. Your name has to be a definition. Okay? The very first name that comes up in your mind is not going to be that. The social influences that are going around right now, things are not really set to go that quickly. And things need to be cooked on a little bit. Things need to be thought through a little bit. Things really need to be considered. They really need to be considered. The third point that I really want to dive into with a little bit of some depth is basically the impact. A lot of people don't really consider and think of the impact of what it is that their name is, what their feeling is behind it. They don't really understand that. How many people do you really want to touch? What is your reach? Who do you want this to pull in? Is this going to be for customers? Is this going to be for potential people that are going to want to sponsor you? Who is this for? You got to ask yourself these questions. Who is this for? Because if this is just for you, then go about it the way that you want to go about it. Okay? It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what the feeling is. It don't have to have a feeling. But if this is something that's supposed to be for an audience, for the public, you need to consider that there are going to be rules that you have to abide by. There's a method. There is a recipe. Because when people get your recipe and they taste whatever it is that you're making and they like it, you're going to have to duplicate that same recipe over and over and over again. And that's what drives people to want to do business with you, partner with you, and just overall keep the commerce going with you because they like you as a brand. There's a lot of thought process that goes along with this. It's not just a cut and dry type of thing. The best brands are baked from the bare ingredients. The more work that you put into your brand, the more your brand is going to pay you in the long run. That's just what it is. It's a give and take. You get what you put in. Okay? This is an old principle. And sad to say, a lot of people really have forgotten a lot about the basic principles of what it means to not only work hard, but work smart. Combining all of these 3 points that I just touched on in this episode is basically, aside from the name, it has to be visually recognizable. It has to sound good. It has to, whatever spelling you want to go with, you got to commit to it. It's got to have that kind of feeling that really pulls in whomever this meant for. It's got to pull them in without a doubt. They got to know it. They got to feel it. They got to want it. And that's what that is. Now, if your brand, if your name, if that can do that, then you did your job. Then we can go ahead and move on to design. Then we can do that. In my years of designing from the bare minimum to nothing at all to having too much, I've designed in so many different ways where the things that I've designed, a lot of people, I can tell that they didn't quite think it through before bringing it to me. And I'm having to edit it. I'm having to break it down into smaller pieces so then that way I can give them something of value, because they're so overwhelmed. They're excited. They just want to bring it to me. They just want a visual behind it. They don't care about anything else. And sometimes it's disheartening because it doesn't matter if the graphic looks good. If the name is bad, if the feeling is trash, that is a wasted brand. It's a wasted brand. And it's sad to say that a lot of people out here in this world are not being that truthful. But here in this podcast, you're going to get the truth. You're going to get the straight, to the point, raw, unedited. You're going to get that. Because the brands that I design, the brands that I make, come from homework, come from research and development. Whether that brand takes off the ground or whether it plummets. The point is, there was a substantial amount of research and development that went into each and every brand that I've designed. I hope you got something from this episode. I hope you were able to get a lot of value from this episode. My goal is to not only teach others, but also see other people succeed, especially if they're going through that process of doubt and they're uncertain as to how to go about establishing something, especially an identity. We all want to be somebody in this world, and for those of us that know and have the tools, I feel that we should share them. Feel free to visit my website, www.michaelcrown.com. I'm going to have much more topics to touch on that, and I'm going to be diving into more depth and really break down exactly all of the concerns that you all might have as you submit your suggestions, your comments, your questions, and go from there.